Welcome back to Derry Public Radio. Reporting from the basement of the Derry Civic Center, this is CM Alexander with the news. With vaccines rolling out for summer, it's time to shed that quarantine 19. We in the studio are motivating each other by doing a weight loss competition. My plan? A keto diet, steady workout regimen, and light vehicular manslaughter. You're listening to Derry Public Radio. This is Derry Public Radio.
Welcome back to Derry Public Radio, a bi-weekly Stephen King Book Club podcast. I'm one of your hosts, Joshua Kahn, alongside CM Alexander.
Hello, everyone.
And Benjamin Graham.
Hey, constant readers.
And today we are covering part 1 of Thinner, which was our Patreon selection from Kevin Sundstrom, and we are reading through chapter 17 with CM leading our discussion. CM, take it away.
Thanks, Josh. To start things off, I just want to give a brief description of the book. Thinner is about a Connecticut lawyer, Billy Halleck. That's how I'm pronouncing his name. Does that work for you?
Yeah, sounds good.
He appears to be living, what we consider the American dream. He has a wife, Heidi, a daughter, Linda. She's a teen. He has a good job as a lawyer, a nice home, and a nice neighborhood, friends. And the only problem he seems to have is that he's about 50 pounds overweight, although to him, I don't think it's necessarily a problem.
God forbid.
Right. But the issue is that he is at risk for possibly having a heart attack. So pretty good life overall. And I don't want to derail the train before it's left the station, but something that I want to dive into before we even get to the book is the nature of Billy's character. Because this is very heavily on my mind because we just came off our March Madness episodes and we're talking a lot about antagonists and protagonists and heroes. As I spent more and more time with Billy, I was realizing that he sucks. He's kind of a dick.
Yeah.
And I kept reminding myself that this is a Bachman book, and Bachman books always feel different than King's other work. Our characters are not heroic. These books are bleak and unapologetic about that. They're kind of anti-heroes, and sometimes even that's a stretch. So I just want to get that out there up front because it feels different.
Yeah, for sure. Famously, at least in this room, this might be the first King book that I read for fun while we were recording the podcast.
Really?
Yes. And I hated it. I fucking hated this book. And when you guys I had been dreading, I'm going to have to read this again sometime. Bill Halleck is a piece of shit. The book itself is pretty rough. There's a lot of hate speech in this. That said, kind of enjoying it this time.
What I like is that most books are, what if something bad happens to just an every guy? That's mostly how these go. But Bachman books are, what if the worst thing happened to the worst people?
Yeah.
So I wanted to bring this up because we read The Running Man. And I think I, at least, was a little harsh on it. I didn't really give it that consideration that it is a Bachman book. I was judging it more on what I have come to expect from King. And by the time I was really diving into Stephen King as a teenager, that secret was out. And so I have never picked up a Bachman book without thinking about King. And I tried really hard, and I kind of wish I would have done that with Running Man, but it's too late. I tried really hard to read Thinner with that in mind and see how I enjoyed it. I don't know if I doing it that way.
It is a good thing to keep in mind because the first time through reading this book, it's just fucking unpleasant. And really, for the first half of the book, nothing happens.
That was my chief complaint.
And so I was just like, this book sucks. It's a bunch of, there are no likable characters. None. Nothing happens for a real long time. And I'm just not enjoying it. But this time through, going through and paying attention to, I've been thinking a lot about why I am so into flawed and even shitty characters in other media. But on this podcast, it keeps coming up that I'm like, I fucking hate this main character. No, what the difference is. So yeah, you're right. I've been trying to read this as all these people are kind of shitty. And that's kind of the point that it's trying to make is all of these upper class citizens of whatever this town in Connecticut is called are all pieces of shit.
This book is trying to set up this, it wants to represent this gluttonous, privileged, repercussionless side of America, and it does so very well.
Yeah.
And it's hard for me to get behind that. But anyway, okay, this is interesting because my next note was I felt like I could waste time because you know what doesn't waste time? This book. I felt like we got right into the meat of it.
I think you kind of
immediately.
have to with this.
I mean, yeah, because it starts in media res. We don't have to like wait around and see the curse happen, which is great.
Yeah.
Yeah, structure-wise.
Chapter 1 is titled 246, which refers to Billy's current weight, which is interesting. And not all of the chapters have that countdown, but it did remind me of Running Man, which is why Running Man has been on my mind. I'm like, oh, yeah, that's pretty cool. We, of course, get the curse through Halleck's memory, as you guys said, as he's standing on his bathroom scale, noticing that he has lost 3 pounds, but he's not very excited about it. We meet Halleck's lover. That's what he calls her. Not me.
Gross.
They're super gross at first, and then never again. We also meet his 14-year-old daughter, Linda, with a sexy velvet ribbon.
No.
Why?
No.
Why?
Do you?
I think it's to illustrate, hey, don't be on this guy's side. Like, I really think that this first chapter is a lot of real red flags that, like, are saying no matter what happens to Billy, remember, he sucks.
I hope so, because I was like, okay, is this Stephen King or Bachman trying to tell us Billy blows? Or is he, as he's writing this, forgetting that we're hearing this from the character's perspective? He's like, oh, you know what would be sexy? Velvet ribbon. Yeah.
Honestly, I think it's just that because it's not only in this scene, there's a later scene where they go on a walk. He goes on a walk with his, how old is she?
14?
14-year-old daughter, and spends the entire time thinking about how long her legs are and how her shorts are too short. It's not... I guess it's supposed to be fatherly, where she's like, oh, she's getting so big, but it doesn't come off that way. I don't even remember where I was going with that. It's just weird. And I don't know. I kind of read it as just there are no female characters for Bachman to sexualize, so he had to go with the 14-year-old.
Oh, gosh.
Yeah,
okay.
it's not good. I said I was enjoying it more, not that I liked it.
You know what? Yeah, I am enjoying this book. Or wait, I like it, but I'm not enjoying it. I don't know. I haven't figured it out yet. Billy is trying to get through breakfast, and he is having like these PTSD flashbacks. And his wife can tell that something's up, and she's trying to comfort him. And pretty soon we are going to learn about a couple more characters who are going to be involved that we'll come to meet shortly. But first, we have the tit grabber.
I love that that's like his recurring description.
So much. That's every time Billy refers to him or thinks of Judge Carrie Rossington, this is his character, he thinks about him grabbing his wife's tits. He says,
I would not
at
be
a
over
Christmas
it
party.
either.
Yeah.
I was gonna say that's, I think, fair.
Yeah.
Like I would have been like, yeah, this guy's a piece. I hate this guy.
I don't know why it sounded like I was complaining about that.
No, it sucks that Carrie Rossington is a sex predator, but yeah, you're supposed to like we
Yeah.
said, these are all the characters that are the bad guys.
There's another problem with him, and it relates to Bill's curse. Do you guys want to talk about how he contributed to this ever-evolving situation?
Yeah. I want to jump back. What we know, and like this is like just in that first chapter, we know that leaving the courtroom after being found not guilty, this old gypsy man made his way through the crowd.
Nope.
Yeah.
Yeah, so we're going to talk about this.
Yeah.
They use that word a
so
lot.
much.
I will not be, because it's a racial slur.
Yes.
Oh, I read on Google that that was a word that was normal and preferred for them. Is that not right?
Is it? Because
That's-
I've
I
always
looked it
heard
up
that it's
because-
Romani.
I looked it up because I wanted to not use the wrong word. And it was like, Gypsy, Romani, either's fine.
Interesting.
In the terms of this book, it certainly
It's-
feels like
yeah.
a pejorative.
Yes,
Okay.
it is.
Yeah.
Let's just call them the traveling family.
Let's call them the
Traveling Wilburys.
the Lutz's Ludit
Lemke's.
Lemke's.
Yeah.
Where,
Okay. Lemke's.
where was
The
I?
Lemke family.
Yes.
this Romani man made his way through the crowd. He has a like rotted nose, and he just touched him and whispered the word thinner and then scampered away. At least that's how I imagine it. That's how I
Makes
imagine
the scene so much better.
Like he's just giggling, just hey, got him.
Because
and runs away.
This character, I'm gonna give it a try. Tadas Lemke?
Tattoos?
Yeah, tattoos. Is,
Sure. Better than I expected. He is a threatening character.
Yeah.
Like, he is unknowably old and has
Yeah.
magic.
Can I show you guys a picture of him? And make sure to make a good face for the listeners.
for the listeners, yeah.
Yeah, because I have a special edition of Thinner
Oh.
released by Cemetery Dance. It was really hard to read this book because every time I put it down, on one side is Billy Halleck later in the book, and on the other is Lemke.
Whip it out. Oh, that's disgusting.
Yeah, that's deeply upsetting.
That's what I
Holy
pictured
shit.
every time.
Yeah, he's an old man with no nose. He has a rotten hole where his nose
But
is.
it's described as a spongy hole,
Yeah.
which I
Yeah.
can't
It's like
tolerate.
it's eating away.
It's very bad. He's a very upsetting figure. And I love your idea of him just coming and going like old man McGucket from Gravity Falls. Just, wow! Thinner, yeah! And just running off. Climbing a tree for no reason.
Yeah. I also, it's hard to talk about the family and him by name this early on because we don't know. They don't get identities until nearly the end of where we're reading. He was found not guilty. The problem here is that Judge Titgrabber was the judge presiding over this vehicular manslaughter case, but him and Billy like are golf buddies, and he should have recused himself, and he didn't. And when he didn't, nobody said anything because nobody cares.
So we find out a little more detail about the accident a little later, but it's definitely been affecting Billy and his whole family. His wife, this morning, you guys, she's looking her age. She's looking a whopping 35 years old. An old hag.
Jesus.
Straight up, Billy.
And Linda has had some trouble at school with, being gossiped about and teased a bit by some of her peers because it's really hard being the daughter of someone who killed someone.
Right.
And everybody at school knowing about it. Oh, and I had the note about yellow cotton panties, but we already covered that.
Moving on.
Let's do it again.
I was going to make the argument again, like, it's reading, we're reading from a woman's perspective. It wouldn't be about how fuckable her son is, but we just recorded Mr. Mercedes.
Yeah, that's a good point.
Anyway, it's not all bad news for Halleck. There's some good things on the horizon. He just closed out a big settlement, and he decides that he and Heidi could do with a few days away, and they are going to Mohonk. I'm not sure if I'm pronouncing that right at all, but it's a Victorian castle resort in Hudson Valley, New York. It's like a nature preserve. I looked it up, and I want to live there forever. It is super beautiful. But he's really struggling still because he keeps having all of these flashbacks. He keeps seeing Lemke's face and hearing the word thinner. Here's where we're getting the reveal about what actually happened that night when he hit this woman with his car. And we'll talk about what exactly that was. But I also like that the whole time any of this is happening, he's eating constantly, but mindlessly, which reminds me of me sometimes when I get snacks.
When you ran over a woman, you just ate nonstop.
Yeah,
I
I wasn't getting a hand job.
Well, according to the police report, you weren't.
That's because the chief of police is a good friend of mine.
Exactly.
Let's talk about the actual accident itself.
It's weird that I love the accident.
What?
Okay, wait. I hate it
In its
because
absurdity.
it made me, how do I put this the most appropriate way? When you are a young person in a new relationship and you're exploring ways you can explore things with each other, things happen in cars. I was terrified to death of touching any boy in a car while he was driving.
While he was driving.
Yes, because I'm like, we're going to
It's
hit a gypsy woman and
irresponsible.
he's going to get cursed.
Irresponsible is right. So Halleck and his wife were driving down what seemed like a busy street because all of these Romani people have been in town and there are cars lining the road. So I imagined it as there were a lot of people around, and his wife of many years just decides out of the blue, It's the hand job time. That's right, everybody. Another King book where a hand job is a crucial plot point.
Oh, and it's the first car hand job.
Yeah.
Of all time?
Yeah, because it's described.
Wait, Richard Bachman invented
For this-
road handies?
Yes. No, for this couple. That's
yes.
a point, too, that she's never done that before.
Of
Which
all
is-
days, today.
Which is why this woman is to blame for
Yes.
everything that happens
Amen.
going on.
Preach.
Another reason.
So annoying.
I
That's
really
the
struggled.
hardest part of this book.
That's not the hardest
Oh, my
part.
God. Okay, Ben,
Well,
please
it's-
continue.
So, mid the hardest part of his drive, and an old woman, he describes her as like in her, what?
Like
between
70s?
70 to 90?
Yeah.
Like an old, frail woman comes out between two cars. And before he can pay attention, because he's right there, he fucking runs her over, like literally over, because he describes the blood hitting the windshield and the sound of her rolling under his car.
Yeah.
And his wife's grip. As it
And then,
happens.
yeah, his wife, in her terror, almost rips his dick
Yeah.
off, which would have been fair.
Right.
I don't think there would have been a curse if he would have got his dick ripped off.
He would have just been like,
Yeah, I think
you know what?
I
We're
think
good, man.
Lemke would have been like, serves you right.
It is the sound, the fact that the sound of him hitting her and he can still feel her rolling under the tires, and he states it has not impacted his appetite or his sleep, is the prime example.
Mhm.
If you have not taken away that this is a shitty guy, that's the moment that locks it all into place.
Halleck almost isn't a person in this book as much as he is a stand-in for the upper class middle-aged
Mhm.
white
Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
male.
He represents.
Like
Yeah.
he represents all of the shittiness of suburbia.
generations of shittiness.
Yes.
Which we'll get to much later. But throughout all of these things that are happening, I just want to bring this up. It's not going to come into play for this entire section, but he keeps thinking about an old acquaintance of his, Richard Janelli, right?
Yeah.
Is that how I'm
Mhm.
saying it? Okay. He sounds like a Dolan type character.
Yes.
Yeah, he's a hood. He's an organized crimester.
Yeah.
Why did I say it like
I
that?
don't know, but
he
I
seems,
liked it.
He seems like cool. Just like
Josh.
a cool, badass dude who, like, Billy got him off on his case, and he was just like, hey, come hang out whenever you feel like it. You're a good dude. See you later.
They have an interesting relationship, though, because Billy's like this was a few years ago. He was an up and comer in the law firm, and they threw him this one case with this person. He owns a bunch of restaurants and stuff, and that's kind of the front for his less upstanding business. And he starts to get really close to him. Billy likes him, and it seems like Billy's a little bit naive too, kind of in retrospect, thinking about these things. Janelli has to tell him, come around. A little less, though. It won't look good for you if
Right.
we look too chummy.
And that's another reason why this character is kind of a cool character,
Mhm.
is that that's a genuine friendship
Yeah.
where he's genuinely looking out for this guy. Well, as far as we know. But for him to be like, listen, man, you're cool, but you're on the law and order side of
Mhm.
things. And I'm going to do a bunch of crimes. So
And he
make yourself
knows-
scarce.
Yeah, he likes having Billy as a resource, but he knows to preserve his ability to do something for him, he can't get too deep involved with what he's doing. Anyway, it's going to come up later, but for now, we just need to know that Janelli is a guy who seems to be able to make things happen. So that's why he is on Billy's mind.
And will not be mentioned again for another 200 pages.
We get a chapter of Halleck and his wife Heidi while they're at the resort. I didn't really have much to note about this. We get more of their relationship.
This was the moment that I made a note that just said, Bachman's a romantic.
Oh,
She talks about that, like, she can tell he's lost weight. And the line that I wrote down, you can fool your wife about another woman, at least for a while, not about your weight. A woman who bore that weight down from time to time in the night knew what you weighed.
ooh.
And I was like, Just put that on a Valentine's card, Bachman.
Kind of reminds me of Bill Hodges. And
Oh.
I did think, though, as they're kind of wrapping up their time, they're leaving a place and there's one of these old-timey like weighing machines. Weighing machines?
The weight and fate machine.
Yes, thank you. And he sticks a thing in it, and what comes up is just thinner. Do you think that really happened?
No.
Is this a thing? This machine it's just a scale, but it gives you a fortune.
Sure.
Is that a thing?
I think so.
I can't imagine
Sure.
that's a thing.
Sounds like a real carnival thing.
But it does sound like a real carnival thing. But that's an interesting point you just made, CM, is did this actually happen?
Mm-hmm.
In a different book.
In a king book?
In a king book, maybe. Nah, maybe not. Maybe still in a king book. But in a different book, how much of what we read would you think actually happened? Because there are little bits where we are left to, like, no one, once we get further into the book, no one believes Halleck about a lot of the stuff that we see firsthand. So I feel like in a different book, a lot of this stuff could be passed off as in his head.
I think that would have been more possible if we had gotten chapters from the perspective of the other characters. It would have cast doubt on his reliability as the narrator.
Mm-hmm.
But because it was just him, I was all in. But that would have been cool. I would have liked in this book to doubt the truth of what he's experiencing. Anyway, it's interesting, this vacation, because he actually noticeably, to her, loses weight during this, like, I think it's like 5 days.
Mm-hmm.
And she starts to get really, really worried. And he's upset with her because he's saying, you have been with me this whole time. I am constantly eating. I'm eating way more than a normal person should. Like, I'm clearly not doing this intentionally or starving myself. I'm not anorexic or bulimic, because she's trying to think, okay, what's wrong with him? And of course, the thing she lands on is, oh, there must be a tumor, must be cancer or something really terrible, right? Because that's the only explanation for sudden weight loss, unless it's a curse.
Well,
There's one part that I did relate to reading about it. It's before he finally agrees to go to the doctor, and he's thinking about how his weighing ritual has drastically changed from what it used to be. And I just like that he's describing this. He's like, okay, you guys know. You strip down, so there's no extra weight. You do it before you eat anything. You go to the bathroom if you can. And if all of those things don't line up, you don't get on. Like, my goal is to be a dried out husk every time I step onto the scale.
Yeah.
I did like, though, the reversal of this. He's like, I'm putting change in my pockets.
right?
I'm wearing my heaviest shoes.
I'm loading myself down. And you know the scale weighs heavy. No, it doesn't.
Yeah. The writing here, I wanted to know what you guys thought about it, because he's referring to himself as a heretic, like a devil worshiper who perverses a religious ceremony by hanging a cross upside down. And I was like, well, that's kind of beautiful.
Yeah.
I do love the idea, the lengths to which he is going to try and fool himself that he has not lost 8 pounds.
Yeah.
Which is, in the beginning of the book, it's so funny to me, because I don't think I would get as scared as he was as fast as he does.
He buys into the curse immediately.
Immediately.
But that begs the question, is there some physiological piece of it that he is aware of on a level he's maybe not consciously aware of?
Well, I also had the thought that it's because of the specific genre this book is. Because it occurred to me halfway through this first section, this is not just a horror book. This is maybe the first time I've ever read a body horror book. That all of the terror, all of the scary parts of this book come from what could just be medical anomalies. Like, the scary part of this book is just weird shit can happen to your body at any time, and doctors will not know what the fuck is going on. That's scary.
I kind of wish that you hadn't put that into words just now.
Oh no. It's almost like that was in your notes and you wanted to say it?
No.
Now it's in her psyche.
Yes. I specifically tried not to think of it that explicitly, because
no,
medical things terrify me.
CM's gonna grow scales.
The whole book, I don't think it is, but I've been reading and hoping and wishing that the movie was directed by Cronenberg.
Oh
like
my gosh.
Cronenberg, this is a Cronenberg movie in book form.
Man, okay. Unfortunately, going from that amazing thought, we have to talk about another jackass. Dr. Houston, who's just living life, being rich, being racist.
I hope something
I
terrible
wish
happens
he
to him.
was also cursed.
I want him to hurt. I hate him.
You know what I never get tired of reading about?
Rich,
racist assholes.
Never gets old.
Can't get enough.
I'm going to surprise you guys. And I don't like this character, but I like this character. You know what I mean?
No, not at all.
Like, obviously, yes, you are correct. He is an awful person, but he's such a fucking weirdo, like Coen Brothers movie character. He's just this, like, I imagine him deep leather bag tan in a white suit with like slicked back hair, because he's this doctor, but he's just knocking back lines of coke just right in front
just going for it.
I did wonder reading about this. This was a different time, and I think two things. People were more naive as to what other people were like, kind of their horribleness sometimes. And also, I think during the time this book came out, we were kind of glorifying that type of lifestyle. So it would be really cool to have read this when it came out to illustrate this person being garbage for us in this way, because it would have challenged our perception or opened our eyes to something. Now it's just tiring because it's like, yeah, saturated with that all day, every day.
Yeah, you probably shouldn't do coke and then go do medical exams.
It's not called doing coke, Ben.
It's not.
Call it by its proper name. Toot sweet.
God. No. I think that this character is just another firm example of rich white man has no consequences. He doesn't care about what he says or what he does affecting anybody but him, and that he is just skating through life with it.
Yeah. I'm just saying I'm excited to see this character in the movie.
Yeah.
He seems like a character that you'd be like, man, I hate this guy, but he's fucking hilarious.
Yeah.
Not the racist part. I need to qualify that.
Right.
But like,
an actor could have a lot of fun playing this character.
Yes. I did read this scene as very manic. I imagined him just speaking in a normal tone and cadence, and then as things keep going, he keeps talking, he keeps getting faster and faster. He's like, hey man, yeah, what do you think about this? Do you want to sweet? And that's how I read it.
Yeah.
And it was
Starts
exhausting.
like giggling at his own thoughts. He starts monologuing. And Billy's just like watching him, and we keep cutting to Billy's like inner monologue being like, Jesus Christ, this fucking guy, which is great.
He's not worried about what's going on with Billy because he once saw an old woman grow new teeth.
This is where I started thinking of the body horror.
Yeah.
Because I'm like, he just starts telling all of these stories of like, hey, this is crazy. Someone's heart fell out. Nuts, right?
Yeah.
My dad has been in the medical field my entire life and has some horror stories, and it just reminds me of that. All the stories
nostalgic.
that make you go, ugh, that's awful, because it's just the fucking human body doing shit.
The human body is disgusting.
It's a terrifying place.
Gross.
We get a flashback to the Lemke family coming to town. And I struggled to like Heidi in this scene. What did you guys think of this? When we're meeting them, seeing how they enter a town and try to engage with the townspeople and all of that.
It's a great scene because it shows that, okay, the Romani are not good guys either. They do a lot of shady, sneaky business on top of doing the sideshow acts and stuff they do. But in this scene that we get from them is just them pulling up to a place where a crowd is. They get out and start doing all their acts, like just for tips and everything.
Right.
Yeah, it's the positive side of what this like traveling performing family does. Until the cops, they're like, "Hey, rich people are here. Get out of here, you dirty."
And Heidi even, Linda, there's a cute boy juggling. Linda's like, hey. And Heidi flips out. She's like, you sit down. And then I did like, though, that he smiles and he's missing teeth and Linda loses interest because not having all your teeth is a deal breaker, guys. Get them taken care of.
But it's them being them, like them in their element, and just getting shoved out of here because it's too rich and too wide a neighborhood for these street people to be in.
That leads to an interesting heart-to-heart between Bill and Linda that night that the Lemke family comes into town. And he almost does the good dad thing, and he's trying to be honest with her just about life and how people are just shitty sometimes. But then he really pulls back on all that.
Can I read my note that I wrote for this? She asks him why the cops were giving those people such a hard time. He decides not to lie to her because masturbating doesn't make you stutter. Because that was his example.
Yeah.
He hated his dad for lying to him and saying that if he masturbated, he'd stutter.
There were things my mom would be like, I'll tell you when you're older. You don't want to know right now. And I was like, okay. I bought it. And then later it's like, damn it, Mom.
Right.
Okay, I want to talk about this dream. Because the way King writes
we know how
dreams,
Ben loves the dream sequence.
It's awesome.
The dream sequence is very good. The fact that the chapter is titled Bird Dream is the funniest thing that I've ever heard.
It was great.
He turns into a giant bird. The Lemke does. That's all I remember.
And everybody in town is also
wasting.
thin.
Yeah, that's right.
It reminds me, for some reason, of like scenes from The Stand. With just this dead town, all these corpses, and then birds picking at him.
Made me think of Ensville.
Yeah.
I mentioned chapter 9 specifically because we get another weigh-in for our chapter title. 188 pounds is what he is down to now. And this is where things start to really take an interesting turn. Billy kind of already sucks, but his wife and daughter, that dynamic between all of them seems pretty okay.
Oh, except for the fact that he fucking hates his wife.
Well, this is where he starts to hate her.
I don't know.
This is the first natural thing I feel like he's done. Start to like really like project his anger onto someone who doesn't deserve it.
I agree. But yeah, I don't know about that because in the first chapter we get that they have this issue with each other that they have decided that she will no longer badger him about his weight and he will no longer badger her about her smoking.
Yeah, but I think that could be a married couple's problem.
Is that a healthy marriage? I'm not married. I'm the one here not married, so...
I think it's very noted where he starts to actually blame and hate her. I think before their relationship was just this relationship.
Right.
And
that was the worst part of their life. They had this bickering between the two of them.
He really Bill Hodges the situation.
Oh my God.
He hates Heidi and blames her for giving him a hand job because if she hadn't done that, if she had not picked that night or that moment to finally give him a handy in the car, he would have been paying attention to the road.
Would he have been as angry if this was like the 13th or 14th hand job he'd been given while driving?
He would have been angry.
Exactly.
Way. Yeah, because he's shitty.
He would have found a reason.
He
if
would
it
have
wasn't
found
her,
a
it would have been,
reason.
oh, we were out because of this.
Right. Or she was talking and distracted.
Yeah.
Like
Because-
it would have been something to make it not his fault.
Yeah. This becomes a major, I don't know if it's a theme or if it's just Billy and like the theme is we're supposed to think this is bad. I don't know, but it becomes a theme of Billy believes in spreading the blame around.
Yeah.
Everyone is equally guilty, up to and including the victim of the murder.
I can't wait to get to that scene.
He's a lawyer, you guys.
Yeah.
And I wonder if this hatred is a plot device or...
I know the answer to that. Have
Well,
you guys finished
no,
the book?
I've read it before and I just
Okay.
finished it so that I could make my
okay.
notes for Sunday. But I wonder, though, if it's intended to be a plot device or if it is because Billy's going through this horrible thing, which might elicit sympathy from the readers. And this is how we are going to continue to
hate him.
honor the tone of a Bachman book, which
Yeah.
is we don't like Billy.
Fair.
I just think that's interesting.
I do think it is a plot because there's a line I didn't write down where it was, who said it or anything, but I think he says like, if this was a pie, you need your slice too.
Yeah.
Like
Yeah.
Everyone, I'm eating this whole pie by myself when all of these people are equally guilty. And that becomes a thing later on.
Yeah, because his wife, Lemke, didn't approach her or touch her. And he's like, if he had known what she was doing, she might have her own curse. And we find out that other people have their own curses.
When the book finally does something, it took 80 pages for something to happen in this book.
This is nuts, you guys. So Billy's tests come back that Dr. Houston does. They're fine. And he's getting more, different tests. He's going to be referred to a specialist, this clinic, because Houston's like too high to be a doctor, or he's on. And he's been giving this gypsy curse a lot of thought. Like you said, Ben, he's assigning all this blame, and he's thinking, okay, well, what happened to the other people who are equally or more at fault because they helped me get away with this? I wasn't held accountable for my role in this. And wondering how Tit Grabber's doing, because he let him off very light and he ignored some logistical things for him. And so he goes to Rossington's home and he's not there, but his wife sure the fuck is. And boy, does she have some opinions. She knows what's up. And I really love the scene. I do have to show you guys what Judge Rossington looks like. Ready?
Yeah.
Well, they literally gave him talons.
I know. He's
okay.
I imagine something far more disturbing. In the illustration I have, he looks like an alligator person, which is not scary. It's cool.
Yeah, the way I imagine, the way she describes it sounds fucking disgusting. Billy goes to talk to Rossington's wife, and she's pissed. And Rossington's not there. He is at the Mayo Clinic being treated for what he refuses to acknowledge as anything but skin cancer. But the way she describes it as his skin cracking and forming into scales, but she describes them as yellowish and like deepening to a dark red underneath the scales.
It's starting at his chest and working all the way through the torso. The thing that grabbed me about this is she says that he even puts a cigarette out on his chest and doesn't feel anything because her husband's turning into Killer Croc.
Yeah.
Yeah. He's joined the rogues gallery of Batman. And I wanted to point out, this book was published November 1984. Killer Croc was created February 1983. Coincidence?
Is King a big Batman fan?
Did you guys notice? Because we're going to meet one more person. It was after we meet this person, we didn't talk about his curse, but that the curses are very somehow individualized to the persons. Like, how could Lemke have known what each of these people's like worst fear or greatest vanity is?
Was Rossington afraid of crocodiles?
No.
Did I miss that part?
No, in the description of Rossington when we first meet his wife, she's commenting, or maybe Billy's commenting on how he's always like taken really good care of his skin and he tans and stuff. And the way his skin is described, it's like this nice tanned coffee color, and it's just a point of pride with him. So it's very ironic. It's like these curses are individualized because Billy's gluttonous and he's getting thinner. Rossington loves his skin and he's growing scaly. I'm surprised he's not growing a bunch of tits. But
if only. I did have this thought when he curses Halleck. He caresses his cheek and whispers thinner. What did he say to the other two? If thinner is like just as a word,
scaly.
It's like just as a word in this context and like learning what it means, it's menacing. It has menace to it. I can't think of a word that he could say that would sound menacing.
Yeah.
For a guy like that, flaky.
And then
crocodile.
And then later,
what?
And then later he gives puberty.
Yeah.
What happens to Police Chief Hopley reminds me of our conversation about Arnie Cunningham.
Yes, absolutely.
Because Hopley's face is in motion.
Yeah, it reminded me of latter day Stark.
Yeah,
Yeah.
because they specifically say proud flesh and yellow pus.
Yes, it is. Does anything important happen between these two events? I don't think so.
We
right?
get some more character stuff between Billy and Heidi just to continue that character development, but nothing is as exciting as Rossington's drunk wife, who knows he's a tit grabber, throws her gin at Billy as he's leaving. And then Police Chief Hopley, who also did not do everything he was supposed to do, because they're good buds too.
Well, and also he was the one that ran them out of town in the first place.
Mhm.
And
Although I don't think they're mad about that, because that's kind of like par for the
Yeah,
course. I
that's
mean, not that
true.
they appreciated it, but they're not going to curse a guy over that.
that's fair. Yeah, when Halleck finally hits the road, he's not finding. I guess that's for episode 2, but he's not finding a bunch of other cursed people.
Yeah.
in
The
our
all
town.
police officers.
Yeah,
Yeah, he
Hey.
mentions basically that like
Tatos would be the hero of the story in that case.
that Hopley just didn't investigate it. Like
Yeah.
it was a haphazard investigation.
That's right. He didn't give him a
Breathalyzer.
breathalyzer. That's right. That's
Mhm.
why he got roped into it.
He gives Billy a really good scare, though.
This scene, it is, I think, the point that I was like, okay, this book is all right. this scene got me.
He shows up to Hopley's because he's called to try to find him, and they're like, no, he's been out. And he knocks at the door, there's no answer, and he starts like yelling because he can tell someone's home. And Hopley basically says it's gone too far. Just says that he even says his face is sliding off at one point.
They're on either side of his front door, and you can just feel Hopley like behind the door, crouch
Yeah.
down,
It
just
felt-
like monstrous.
It felt cold and dark to me while I was reading this. I
Yes.
felt that. It was cool.
Yeah. Hopley finally lets him in, and the house is very, very dark. And Hopley tells the story that he was with his parents at a restaurant he'd never been to before, and the old Romani man came out of the bathroom when he was on his way in, touched him, and said something his brain wasn't ready to process, and then left, giggling, scampered.
Yeah.
if it makes you happy, Ben. He sees that his face is just like I said, covered in acne and pussy and disgusting. And the thing that stands out to me in this scene is that they basically sit around in the dark and play pass the blame.
Mhm.
Like, let's talk about everyone else whose fault it is. And that's when Billy shares his plan.
Yes.
A brilliant, genius plan. He is going to track down the man who put the curse on him. He's going to step straight up to his face and he's going to be like, hey, it was her fault too. Like, what the fuck?
Yeah.
That's the most insane, privileged plan to be like, you can't punish me. This woman walked
She
out. in the
jaywalked.
street. Yeah, she jaywalked. That deserves to be hit by my
That's
car.
a crime. How many cases do you think he's won?
Well, we know at least one.
Yeah. And it took years.
Yeah, that was not by his hand at all. It was a complete surprise that he won. The setting of this scene, the way it is, I can picture it. This is something that we don't talk about enough, I don't think, in King's work. The way he paints a picture. I'm not always the best at like imagining the exact, what is happening in the book in my head. Like I don't have the like complete
It's not a movie for
visual,
you.
Not always.
Yeah.
Except with King. Scenes like this, I can picture it. If I could draw, I could draw this scene perfectly. It's him sitting in the dark with this figure hunched in a corner. It's like an old monster movie.
Mhm.
And when he shines the light on his face, it's only for a second, and then he puts it back, and in that 1 second, he sees enough, and it's so good.
I wrote the quote down. It describes his face as full of cataclysmic upheavals. Zits and proud flesh, yellow pus, and blackheads cover him. So gross. Also, Hopley basically says, if this gets worse, I'm prepared to eat my service revolver. and believe me, if I had my chance, if I got my hands on that man, I'd kill him slowly and painfully. He just only feels for revenge right now.
And Hopley's thing is that he had bad acne as a kid and has occasional flare-ups that Dr. Toot Sweet treats him for.
Right. So this is the point where I had the thought, is like, is this real?
Oh.
Because this scene is very dreamlike.
Yeah.
It's kind of floaty. He walks into this guy's house and I can just imagine it's pitch black. He literally walks in and like turns a corner and sees him like outlined walking into a room. It's all so horror movie. And then later on, we find out that Hopley has killed himself. And when they find him, they're like, yeah, he had really bad acne, but
not what Billy had
that's
described.
That not this horror show that Billy witnessed. And this was the point that I was like, if this was a different book, would we believe that this happened at all? Or like maybe it did happen, but they're both so racked with guilt that they saw what they want to see.
I think the only thing that stands against that is that we got Carrington's from his wife instead of him.
Yes.
She saw his skin, like she saw how bad it was getting, saw that his like hands were getting talony.
That his dick was going to fall off.
Yeah, his dick was going to fall off. Yeah.
So it just reverses probably to protect Lemke so that he's not leading a trail of curse evidence behind.
It's like Billy says, it's like a werewolf. When you kill a werewolf, they turn back into a guy.
Yeah.
Or Hopley blew most of his head away, and what they found of his head just had a few zits.
I'm just obsessed with the idea of like this being more of a thriller of, is this a curse or is Halleck just going insane with guilt?
Yeah. He ends up agreeing to go to this clinic, the Glassman clinic.
Because time's not an issue for him. So he can spare 3 days.
Right. So they do a bunch of tests and the doctors cannot figure it out. And they're like super excited about that because they think it might be psychological anorexia or a couple other things that don't exist yet that they can invent and be very famous for. And so they're like, okay, man, we just want you to, live here until you die or we fix you. And we'll give you a discount on the testing. You don't have to pay full price. He's like, no, thank you. Very calmly. And they're like, they huddle. Okay, here's what we'll do. You don't have to pay for any tests. You can just, pay for being here for the facility. He's like, no, thanks. They huddle again. Like, okay,
That's so stupid.
Here's what we're gonna do. They're like stooges. You don't have to pay for anything. Just let us do tests on you. And he's like, no, thanks.
And there you have it, America, the solution to our healthcare problem. Just get so sick that no one knows what's wrong with you.
Yeah.
It'll be free.
And his refusal causes his wife and Dr. Toot Sweet to kind of team up on him, which led to one of my all-time favorite lines in any of these books, where Dr. Toot Sweet says on the phone, your wife says you've been spending a lot of time at a bar, have you? And Halleck's reply is, if I had, wouldn't your wife have seen me? Oh! Fucking great.
Got him.
Yeah, Billy's kind of turning on everyone around him who gets in his way or might be getting in his way or just doesn't agree with him. By this point, he's made up his mind that this is real, this is a curse. Nothing I do medically is going to make any difference. He's continuing to lose weight rapidly despite eating constantly. And he's really terrified. And in Houston, or the doctors, one of them has already mentioned, if you don't fix this, if you keep losing weight, you're going to have a lot of other health problems and psychological problems because your body's just not going to be able to support you. You are going to die really difficultly, and we don't want that. The reality of that happening during this bonkers curse it was just a cool juxtaposition, those two things for me.
Oh, we skipped over, because it's mentioned very briefly that because he works for this law firm, they have people who can find things, and that he has like reached out to one of their investigators to say, find me literally any and everything you can find on these people. And then the guy's like, cool, get back to you whenever.
I also thought it was cool. I was a little blindsided when Heidi sends Linda away to her aunt's without being able to say goodbye to her dad or anything. And I liked the way it was written because it felt like a shock to me too, right along with Billy. I was like, whoa, that's extreme because yeah, he's refusing treatment, but as far as she knows, he might have cancer or some sort of problem. And she's punishing him for that. And I know she's trying to protect Linda because Linda's taking it really hard, but maybe let them have a farewell.
Right.
Could be the last time she sees her dad.
It's a very harsh betrayal, which only fuels his feelings towards her right now.
And he ends up giving in and telling Heidi the truth. And she's like, okay, crazy. And then that's really when she decides, Dr. Houston and I need to have a talk. And if he's not going to go along with things, we're going to have him committed for his own safety and health. So Billy knows that because he's a lawyer, he knows that competency hearings and paperwork take time. So he's not really concerned about this right now. And instead of just pretending to consider anything, he's pushing back really, really hard because he has his plan. He's having his firm hire some guys to follow up on this family to track them down. And he also finally calls Janelli and doesn't really know why he's calling him, but just tells him he's having some trouble and he might need a friend. And the dude's like, okay, well, you just keep me posted.
Because Janelli's awesome.
We also find out some interesting information from the investigation that he's initiated through his law firm about Lemke and his family.
Yeah, he finds out that instead of being the grandfather like he thought, it is actually Tedus is Susanna's father.
Well, no, he thought he spent the whole book thinking that the woman he hit was his
his wife. Yeah, that's right.
Because this woman was
very
in her,
old
70s.
Yeah. But finding out that it was his daughter, this is the point where Halleck does his best attempt at becoming a real protagonist. Because this is the first time he thinks how he would respond if somebody ran over his daughter. And it starts making him less angry about throwing blame around and a little more focused on the trauma he caused.
Yeah.
Interesting that when he thought it was his wife, he wasn't like, man, how would I feel if it had been my wife?
Yeah, I hadn't even thought of that.
So I can see your earlier point. Yeah, he hated her from the start. So he gets a decent idea of where the Lemkes might be based on this information, and he decides to hit the road. He writes Heidi a goodbye letter, claiming that he still loves her, really making a point.
It is a bad letter.
Yeah,
he does a bad
awful
job. Because he literally spends like 2 paragraphs being like, listen, I gotta go. This is your fault too. I think the reason you're angry at me is because you know this is your fault. Anyway, by the way, still love ya. And I hope when I come back, we can be happy again. And it's like, oh,
that's
buddy.
such an obvious lie.
Yeah, buddy, I don't think that's in the cards.
See, I saw this letter as a milestone for him, in that it is the point when he realizes that his plan isn't go and say, hey, it was her fault too. It's the moment he realizes I need to go apologize. I need to try to find a way to make this right and not throw blame around anymore. And
he literally does say, he's like, but also you don't have to be upset because you're so guilty.
Yeah,
because I'm going to take care of it.
He's still throwing blame around.
And he's trying. And he points out that basically if he can be cured, he wants to leave this town and never come back because this has exposed all of the rottenness that he's benefited from probably his whole life. And he's just really seeing it now, and he is ready to be done with this place and everyone in it. Which is really kind of the thesis. Is this the thesis statement of the book? Because I think it thinks it is. Because this is the point where he's like, okay, I've realized the way I've been living my life, this upper class suburban bullshit is all bad. I'm out. And he hits the road, kind of mimicking the Romani. He becomes a nomad, following them. And there's kind of this undertone of like,
the Romani are free in a way that these poor suburban pieces of shit aren't. Except, like Josh said earlier, the Romani aren't good guys either.
Right.
They're also described as criminals and like really unfortunate stereotypes. It can't have it both ways.
I think the thesis of this book is that everybody sucks and no one is blameless, except children.
That's a much better thesis statement for this book.
Unfortunately. I thought it was interesting when we hit chapter 17 because we hadn't had the weigh-ins in a while. And so when I found out, when I looked at the chapter title, this is when he gets on the road, it's 137. I still expected him to, because I knew he was continuing to lose weight, but I thought he'd be like down to maybe 160 because our last weigh-in was like 188.
But it's been a few weeks.
Yeah. And I want to, again, for our listeners, I want to show you guys the picture in my nice fancy book of how he is depicted.
Oh, God.
I couldn't help if in the movie the guy playing Billy Halleck doesn't go full Christian Slater in The Machinist.
Christian Bale.
What did I say?
Christian Slater.
Yeah.
Dolan.
If he doesn't go full
Full
Christian
Jack
Slater
Nicholson.
in Dolan's Cadillac. Full Christian Bale in The Machinist. Boy, howdy.
Yeah.
I don't see how the movie can work. Like, he has to look skeletal.
And this starts something that we'll get more of later, but people are starting to take notice of him in a very negative way that he's really not used to experiencing before, because he looks very uncomfortably ill. So he has a pretty good lead on where they might be, thanks to a waitress at a diner. And I swear I was like, man, why do we have like 5 pages of this scene? But it was only 1.5. It just felt excruciatingly long. And I don't think we really need to talk about that because we're going to have all of his on the road stuff in part 2 of Thinner on our next episode.
So I wanted to ask you, because that's where we left off, right?
Yep.
I wasn't aware that you had read it, so I guess it's mostly for Josh. What do you think we're going to see more of, or what do you think Act 2 of this book is like?
I think we are going to get to know the Romani as people, is kind of what I'm thinking. Because up until now, they've been 2 first names and just generic, these are problem people. I'm thinking in Act 2, we're going to get more of maybe who they are as people and bring home the, we're not so different, you and I.
You think Bachman's going to humanize them?
Not in the way Bachman would.
Right.
Like, they're still going to be terrible. Like, I'm sure they're still going to be awful people. But I think we're going to attach more emotion to them. So that way, this isn't just a one-sided, like, we're feeling stuff for Halleck. Now we'll see how everything has maybe affected the Romani people. That's it for this episode of Derry Public Radio. As always, thank you for listening. Join us for our next episode where we will be covering the rest of the book, Thinner. For Benjamin Graham and CM Alexander, I'm Joshua Kahn reminding you, when you're out for revenge, you're not apt to see how everything is shades of gray.
Hey everyone, CM Alexander here. Thank you for listening to Thinner Part 1. We hope you enjoyed it. As always, you can find us on Facebook and Instagram at Derry Public Radio and Twitter at Derry Public. And of course, you can send us an email, which we really, truly enjoy, at derrypublicradio@gmail.com. Check out our merch on our Etsy store, search Derry Public Radio. And if you want more but don't want to wait 2 weeks, sign up for our Patreon. At the $5 tier and up, we have a monthly bonus episode of The Club, and we sometimes release our Derry Public Radio episodes early there as well. And we're also working on more content for our Patreon in addition to the bonus episodes, store discount, and other fun things we send you when you sign up. Before you go, Ben shared another gem from his childhood that I had to cut for time, but I couldn't let this precious moment disappear forever. So I will play it after my outro here in just a second, followed by a couple of goofs from the opening of the episode. Hope you enjoy. Oh, sorry, I got really excited about this. My note was, Halleck lives every human being's nightmare in court shortly after this.
He stands up and his pants just fall down.
Okay, I have a story that is unrelated to the book. If this needs to be cut, so be it. In my senior year of high school, I was in a play called The Night of January 14th, I believe. It was a courtroom drama. It was not good. Not just because it was a high school production, but because the play itself is boring and shitty.
Fair.
I played a detective who was called up to the stand to whatever. But the gimmick is the director of the show placed all of the witnesses who were in the show in the audience. And so when they got called up to the stand, we went up on stage, gave our evidence.
Testimony,
thank you. And went back down and sat down. Well, opening night, I was sitting in the audience, like third row, and the costume pants that I was wearing were too big for me. And so my name gets called. My character's name, I do remember, was Detective Homer, which that just adds. And so they're like, Detective Homer to the stand or whatever. And I stand up and literally my pants go to my knees.
End scene.
And I hurriedly pull them up and walk up on stage, waddling with my hands on my hips. Audience members serve as the jury in that play, and I don't think I helped the case.
Oh my God.
That's amazing.
So yes, worst nightmare. It's a bad thing to happen.
Sorry.
What is your deal?
When you said Joshua Kahn, I almost said, hello, everyone. And I had to...
Oh my God.
Wow.
Give away that we are on our podcast that you and I are one person. And we're just one very talented ventriloquist.
I'm your host, Joshua Kahn. Hello, everyone.
Hello, everyone. Let's try that
sorry.
again.
Okay. Oh, hey, do you want to sit in that chair instead?
Yes. I fucking hate this chair so much. If I could burn a chair and you wouldn't get mad.
I don't know why you can't sit still like a statue
Have
like
you
I do.
When have you ever known me to be still? Oh,
That's the only problem, is a big chair.
now I'm going to just roll everywhere. Welcome to the Roller Derby Podcast. I'm Joshua Kahn from everywhere. Because I'm rolling everywhere. All right.
Yeah, let's get all these out before we start recording.
Before we start recording a very dark book. All right. Welcome back to Derry Public Radio, a bi-weekly Stephen King book club podcast. I'm one of your hosts, Joshua Kahn, alongside CM Alexander.
Hello, everyone.
And Benjamin Graham.
Hey, Constant Readers.
And today we are kicking off our first episode of Thinner, which is our Patreon selection from Kevin Sundstrom. And we are reading through chapter 16, and CM is leading our discussion. CM, take it away.
Oh, shit. Through chapter 16?
Yeah.
I thought it was through chapter 17.
It's definitely through chapter
Sorry,
17.
through chapter... Fuck. It's
you?
okay. I read it.
Oh, okay.
Let me take that one more time. I'm just going to do the whole intro over.
Also, just so you know, that time when you said Joshua Kahn, I almost said, but for fun. That's why I was kind of off when you actually got to my name. I was like, oh shit.
Oh God, this episode's going great.
That's all for now, listeners. Goodbye.